Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kelly Settinger. I am a writer, reader, photographer, and dreamer living in the Buffalo Niagara region of Western New York. As I film this, today is Valentine's Day, February 14th, so I'm going to just kind of go through my personal collection of poetry books, which are all located up here. Here in my personal library. That sounds kind of pretentious, but I gotta embrace that, personal library. I have a personal library. This room is come back to that in another video. I do have a number of collections of poetry devoted to love poems. It's a very natural subject, and you're going to have some of those. I do maintain that one of the best ways to put together a poetry collection is, first of all, look for themed collections, and you can often find them in the cheap section of the bookstore, whether it's the Barnes and Nobles of the world or wherever, or indie books. A lot of times they'll have cheaper collections because they tend to be easy put together, easy to get out into the world, and that's a really good way to do it. You can also find really wonderful ones at library used book sales. Those are excellent ways to amass a nice poetry collection fairly quickly, especially if you're just getting out in poetry and you're not really sure what your tastes are. Before I get too deep into this, I would just like to say, Alfred Lord Tennyson, you are one of my favorite all-time poets. If I was to push to name one favorite poet, I would probably come up with Tennyson more often than not. That said, I'm not sure I'm totally on board with your formulation that it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I understand the logic, I understand what you're getting at with there, but at the same time, I don't know. Try it, I suppose. There are times when I can really see it may have been actually better to have not loved than to love and lost, but we can come back to that another time. One of my favorite collections is this one here. 4 Centuries of Great Love Poems, compiled by Deborah Starr. I really like this one because it's one poem to a page. Everything is done by sections, themed sections, which is really nice. It's nice when they just put them into themes. If you're looking for a specific kind or variety of love poem, that can be very helpful. This one may be a little hard to find because it was unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but it was printed by Borders under their imprint, Borders Books and Music. They obviously don't exist anymore. So I do recommend this one. If you see it in the used bookstore, grab it. This is a really good one. I'm sure you can probably find copies of this in used markets, eBay, that sort of thing. But that one's going to be a little hard to find now. Love Poetry Out Loud, 100 Passionate Poems to Stir the Heart, edited by Robert Alden Rubin. This is a really wonderful little collection. I like this one a lot. Not just because it collects a lot of really nice poems, really great poems, but it also provides a lot of really helpful running commentary, especially in the marginalia, which is always pleasant. I find this kind of book invaluable, and I really like having this sort of thing around. So if you're going to have one poetry collection devoted to love in your personal library, this would be a good one to check that one out. Speaking of very cheap collections, this one I also got at Borders, although this one's by Dover, so I imagine this one's easily found elsewhere. According to the price tag, original Borders price tag, this was only $2. I don't remember exactly when I bought this. Obviously, it was at a Borders, but this one's not grouped at all. But it's literally just a collection of famous love poems from the history of English literature. Great love poems, edited by Shane Weller. Like I said, this is a Dover selection, so Dover's a known publisher for this kind of thing. So if you want a really cheap and nicely representative collection, this is a good one. This one here, I actually haven't delved too much into this. Love's Aspects, the world's great love poems, selected by Jean Garrigue. I'm assuming that's a French name. I'm not really sure about that. Says she's American, so I honestly I should probably look that up. But this is another themed collection. There's a lot in here. This one's over 400 pages, so there's a lot of good stuff in here. I believe it's also grouped. Well, it just says section 1, section 2, section 3. So I'm not really sure how if there's a if the sections are themed. I would have to dig into this one a little bit. I have used this one just to kind of flip through and get some references for, but this is a nice one. Probably tell this is an older book, and it is a book club edition. This one is, I can tell by the printing and the way that the style of the paper. This dates to 1975, so I almost certainly got this at a library sale. I don't recall when exactly, but my local library does have wonderful used book sales, and like I said, that's a great resource for getting poetry collections of lots of different kinds. Then we have this little thing here, Love Sonnets, selected and with commentary by Louis Untermeyer, with illustrations and calligraphy by Ben Shahn. This is another library book sale acquisition. This was printed in 1964 by the Odyssey Press. I don't know anything about the Odyssey Press, but this is really cool. It's like a little... If you look around for this sort of thing, you'll find that you'll get poetry books that are also art books. And that's always nice to have around. Pages are really slick, so it's kind of hard to get grip on them. But here's a representative example. There's a nice drawing and picture on one side, and then you have the sonnet on the other. And it's in a kind of calligraphy. This is a sonnet by Dante Alighieri. Here's one by Edmund Spenser. Robert Greene. So there's a lot of good representation here. This is not a long book by any means. I think it's only like 40 pages long, but this sort of thing is it's really pleasant to have this sort of thing around. Not every poetry collection in your library needs to be a big academic tome just loaded with poems. This sort of thing is really nice to have around. And lastly, even smaller, this is in the line A Little Paperback Classic, Sonnets from the Portuguese by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Bring that closer. See that a little bit better. Very slender book. It's just the collection, that particular collection of sonnets by Mrs. Browning. For years, and actually when I looked this up the other day online, just to kind of confirm what I thought, for years I thought sonnets from the Portuguese meant that Browning had actually translated these from other poets who had written them either from Portugal or in Portuguese, the language originally. Turns out that's not the case. She literally wrote all these, so you got to look this stuff up sometimes. But she wrote all these. Apparently, her husband Robert Browning actually nicknamed her the Portuguese, which is interesting in and of itself. So these were all directed from her to him. So sonnets from the Portuguese are basically sonnets from me, to you, meaning her husband Robert Browning. So I haven't read all of these. Of course, one of the most famous lines in all poetry, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." That's the opening line of one of these sonnets. I've read a bunch of these. They're wonderful sonnets. They're very famous for a reason. So that's just my brief little tour of the love section of my poetry library. If you have any other poetry book recommendations, collection recommendations that you'd like to share or recommend, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, hit like, subscribe, please. And we will see you around the galaxy. Bye now.